The air in courtroom 4B was thick with the scent of old paper and quiet desperation. All eyes were on the woman at the plaintiff's table, her face pale, her hand resting protectively on the gentle swell of her pregnancy. A single silent tear traced a path down her cheek as her husband's lawyer painted her as a conniving gold digger. The jury shifted their expressions, a mixture of pity and suspicion. But then her own lawyer, a quiet man, no one had paid much mind, rose to his feet. The room held its breath for his final, desperate plea. Instead, he looked at the judge and delivered a statement so staggering, so utterly unforeseen, that the court proceedings didn't just stop, they froze in time. Anya Davenport believed she was living a fairy tale. At 26, she was married to Ethan Davenport, the charismatic and ruthless CEO of Davenport Capital, a man 15 years her senior, whose name was a regular fixture in the Wall Street Journal. Their home was a sprawling minimalist masterpiece of glass and steel overlooking the cliffs of Malibu, a place so sterile and perfect it often felt more like a museum than a home. Anya, an orphan who had lost her single mother at 19, had been swept off her feet by Ethan's grand gestures, his confident command of every room he entered, and the promise of a security she had never known. For 5 years, she played her part perfectly. She was the gracious hostess, the beautiful accessory at charity galas, the silent admirer of his business acumen. She curated their life with the precision of an art director, ensuring every dinner party, every vacation, every public appearance was flawless. But the gilded poles of her cage were becoming more apparent with each passing day. Ethan's love was conditional, a reward for her compliance. His compliments were transactional, his affection a tool of control. He corrected her choice of dress, her opinions on art, even the friends she tried to keep from her life before him. Anya, darling, he'd say, his voice a smooth, cold caress. That artist is so provincial. Our guests expect a certain level of sophistication. Her friends, who worked normal jobs and laughed a little too loudly for Ethan's taste, were soon phased out. Her life had been hollowed out and refurnished with his desires. The discovery of her pregnancy was for Anya a beacon of hope. A child, a baby, would bring warmth into their cold home. It would be someone she could love unconditionally, someone who would love her back with an untainted heart. It would make them a real family. When she told Ethan, his reaction was muted. He was standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out at the Pacific, as if calculating its net worth. He didn't turn. "Is that so?" he said, his tone flat. "We'll need to hire a new nanny. A proper one. British, perhaps." There was no joy, no shared moment of wonder. There was only logistics. That night, Anya cried herself to sleep, her hand on her still flat stomach, whispering promises to the tiny life inside her. The end came not with a bang, but with the quiet slide of a manila envelope across their marble kitchen island. It was a Tuesday morning. Anya was nauseous, the familiar scent of Ethan's imported Italian coffee turning her stomach. He was dressed in a bespoke charcoal suit, ready for another day of corporate conquest. "Anya," he said, not meeting her eyes, "we need to discuss the terms of our separation." The words didn't register at first. She stared at him, then at the envelope. "Separation. Ethan, what are you talking about?" "I'm pregnant." "I'm aware," he said, finally looking at her. His eyes, the color of cold steel, held no warmth, no regret. "This marriage has run its course. It's a business arrangement that no longer serves my interests." Her world tilted. "A business arrangement? I'm your wife." He gave a short, dismissive laugh. You were a suitable partner, but my needs have evolved. I'm with someone else now. Her name is Isabella Croft. You've met her. From the Sotheby's board. Isabella. Younger, sharper, from a family with old money and even older connections. Anya felt the blood drain from her face. She stumbled back, her hand flying to her mouth. The envelope lay on the counter, a silent, lethal serpent. Don't be hysterical, Anya. It's unbecoming, Ethan said, straightening his tie. My lawyers have been very generous. There's a one-time settlement of $250,000. In exchange, you'll sign a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement. You will move out by the end of the month. The child, I'll provide a standard child support stipend, but I will be seeking primary custody. It's better for the child to be raised in a stable, financially secure environment. $250,000. To a normal person, it was a fortune. To Ethan Davenport, it was less than he'd spent on his watch. He was buying her silence, erasing her from his life for the price of a mid-range luxury car. And he was threatening to take her baby. Custody, she whispered, her voice trembling. You can't be serious. I am deadly serious, he replied, his voice dropping to the chillingly calm tone he used in boardrooms just before a hostile takeover. My legal team is the best in the country. Marcus Thorne himself is handling it. Do you really think you stand a chance? Sign the papers, Anya. Take the money and build a quiet life for yourself somewhere. It's the smartest move you can make. He turned and walked out, leaving the envelope on the island. The heavy glass door slid shut behind him with a soft, final thud. Anya sank to the floor, the cold marble seeping through her silk pajamas. The fairy tale was over. She wasn't a princess in a castle. She was a prisoner, and she had just been served her eviction notice. The tears finally came hot and desperate for the life she thought she had, and for the child she would have to fight for, with everything she didn't have. The next few days were a blur of shock and paralyzing fear. Anya was a ghost in her own home, wandering through the vast empty rooms that now felt alien and hostile. The staff, once polite, now moved around her with averted eyes, their loyalty already transferred to the man who signed their paychecks. Ethan was gone, staying at one of his city penthouses with Isabella. He communicated only through brusque emails from his lawyer, Marcus Thorne. Each message was a new turn of the screw, a new pressure tactic designed to make her sign the papers. Anya knew she was outmatched. She had no money of her own. Her bank account was a joint one, and she found to her horror that the balance had been reduced to a mere $5,000, Ethan's calculated allowance for her to move out. He had thought of everything. She couldn't afford a cheap motel, let alone a lawyer capable of standing up to Marcus Thorne, a man known in legal circles as the Shark. Despair was a physical weight pressing down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. One night, unable to sleep, she found herself in the back of her closet, going through a small, leather-bound box of her mother's things. It was all she had left of her, a few faded photographs, a pressed flower, a handful of letters. Tucked into a side pocket was a worn business card. Julian Croft-esque. Attorney at law, for those who have no voice. Anya vaguely remembered her mother, Elena Hayes, mentioning the name. He was the son of an old family friend, a man who had chosen to practice public interest law instead of joining a lucrative corporate firm. A good man, her mother had said once. He fights for people, not for profits. It was a pathetic long shot, a pro bono lawyer against the Davenport legal machine. It was like bringing a pocket knife to a gunfight. But it was the only shot she had. Her hands shaking, she Googled his name. He was still practicing running a small, unassuming office in a less fashionable part of downtown Los Angeles. The next day, she took an Uber to the address, the fare, eating a significant chunk of her remaining money. The office was on the second floor of a tired brick building above a laundromat. The contrast to Marcus Thorne's high-rise temple of glass and chrome was jarring. The waiting room was small, the furniture clean but worn. A kind-faced woman in her 60s greeted her. Julian Croft emerged a few minutes later. He was nothing like she expected. He was in his late 30s, with thoughtful, intelligent eyes, a slightly rumpled suit, and an air of quiet intensity. He wasn't a showman. He was a listener. He led her into his office, a room overflowing with books and files. He listened to her story for a full hour, without interruption, his gaze never leaving her face. He read the settlement agreement she'd brought his expression unreadable. When she finished, her voice hoarse from emotion, a heavy silence filled the room. Mr. Davenport is being represented by Marcus Thorne, Julian said. Finally, his voice calm and even. This will be an exceptionally difficult fight. Thorne's strategy is to bleed the opposition dry to bury them in motions and discovery until they can no longer afford to fight. I know Anya whispered, tears welling in her eyes again. I can't pay you. I have almost nothing. Julian leaned forward, steepling his fingers. He looked at her not with pity, but with a strange, analytical curiosity. You said your mother was Elena Hayes. Anya nodded, surprised. Yes. Did you know her? My father knew her. A long time ago, he said, his eyes distant for a moment. He then refocused on Anya. Tell me about her. About her family. Your grandparents. What do you know about them? The question was bizarre. My grandparents. My mother never spoke of them. She said she was estranged from her family, that they disapproved of her life. She grew up in Europe, I think. She was very private about her past. What was her father's name? Do you know? Julian pressed gently. No. I'm sorry. She never said. She came to America alone and never looked back. Why is this important? Julian didn't answer directly. He stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the street below. Anya, this is going to sound strange, but I need you to trust me. I will take your case. I will represent you pro bono. But you must follow my instructions to the letter. Do not speak to your husband or his lawyers. Do not sign anything. Forward all communication to me. And be patient. The wheels of justice can turn slowly, but sometimes they grind exceedingly fine. Anya was speechless. He was taking her case. For free. A wave of relief so powerful it made her dizzy washed over her. For the first time in weeks, she felt a pinprick of light in the crushing darkness. Why, she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Why are you doing this? Julian Croft turned from the window, and for the first time she saw a flicker of something sharp and fierce in his calm eyes. Let's just say, I have a professional interest in cases where powerful men believe they are above the law, and because I believe your mother Eleanor would have wanted someone to fight for you. He was holding something back. She could feel it. A piece of the puzzle was missing. But as she walked out of that small, cluttered office and back into the harsh sunlight, she wasn't just a victim anymore. She was a client. She had a voice, and its name was Julian Croft. The following weeks were a brutal education in psychological warfare. True to Julian's prediction, Marcus Thorne and his team launched a legal onslaught designed to intimidate and exhaust Anya. They filed motions demanding access to her personal diaries, her emails, her text messages from before she even met Ethan. They subpoenaed the few old friends she had, hoping to dig up any shred of information that could be twisted to paint her as unstable or manipulative. Their official narrative, presented in court filings, was cruel and simple. Anya Hayes was a classic gold digger. She had trapped a wealthy, successful man with a surprise pregnancy and was now attempting to extort a fortune from him. They presented Ethan as the victim, a benevolent husband whose generosity was being taken advantage of. Each legal document that arrived via Julian's office was a fresh stab of pain. Anya would read the vicious, calculated lies and feel the fight drain out of her. Ethan, the man she had loved, was actively trying to destroy her character, to leave her with nothing, not even her dignity. Through it all, Julian was a rock. "This is expected, Anya," he would tell her during their brief phone calls. "It's Thorne's playbook. It's noise. Ignore it. Focus on yourself and the baby." His own legal responses were infuriatingly passive to her. He didn't fight fire with fire. He filed quiet procedural counter-motions requesting extensions, clarifying minor points of law, and generally slowing the process to a crawl. To Anya, it felt like they were losing. "Julian, they're burying us," she said in a panicked call one evening after receiving a motion to compel a psychological evaluation. "They want to prove I'm an unfit mother before the baby is even born." "You have to do something." "I am doing something, Anya," he replied, his voice as steady as ever. "I'm buying us time. Time is the one thing they don't want us to have. Trust the process." What Anya didn't see were Julian's nights. After she went to bed, her mind filled with anxiety, Julian was at his office, surrounded by stacks of old legal tomes, corporate records, and genealogy charts. He wasn't just fighting a divorce case. He was on a treasure hunt, following a trail of breadcrumbs left decades ago. His father, a decent but timid lawyer, had once worked for a man of immense, almost mythical wealth, a reclusive industrialist named Arthur Kensington. Kensington was a genius, a tyrant and a hermit who had built a global empire in mining and technology. He had one child, a daughter named Eleanor, whom he adored but smothered. When Eleanor fell in love with a penniless musician and fled to America, Kensington's rage was biblical. He cut her off, ordering his staff never to speak her name again. But as Julian's father had confided in him years ago, Arthur Kensington never legally disinherited his daughter. It was a strange oversight, born perhaps of pride, or a secret, stubborn hope that she would one day return. He had his security team track her discreetly, receiving yearly updates on her simple, quiet life. He knew when she died, and he knew she had left behind a child, a granddaughter named Anya. Julian was now piecing together the final parts of this story. He hired a private investigator in Switzerland who confirmed the existence of a labyrinthine series of trusts and holding companies, all leading back to a single, unchangeable directive in Kensington's master will. He discovered that Arthur Kensington, now in his late 90s and in failing health, was living his final days in a secluded estate on Lake Geneva. His entire multi-billion-dollar fortune was designated to flow to his only living direct descendant upon his death. The divorce case was merely the stage. The real drama, the one that would change everything, was unfolding thousands of miles away in the quiet antiseptic room of a dying titan of industry. Julian's strategy wasn't passive, it was predatory. He was waiting, biding his time for the precise moment to strike. The preliminary court date was set. Ethan's team demanded a jury trial, a strategic move to play on public sympathies and paint Anya as a grasping shrew in front of a panel of her peers. The day before the trial was to begin, Julian met with Anya. She was now visibly pregnant, her face etched with worry. "I'm scared, Julian," she confessed. "They'll tear me apart on the stand." Julian looked at her, his expression serious. "They might. And you have to be strong. But I want you to remember something. No matter what they say, no matter how they try to define you, they do not know who you are. Tomorrow, they are going to find out." His words were cryptic, but they held a core of absolute certainty that was for the first time in months contagious. Anya took a deep breath. She didn't understand his plan, but she chose to believe in the man who was fighting for her. She would walk into that courtroom tomorrow, not knowing that she was about to become the epicenter of a legal earthquake. The Honorable Judge Marion Albright presided over courtroom 4B, with an air of no-nonsense authority honed over 30 years on the bench. She had seen every flavor of marital strife, from petty squabbles over china sets to bitter custody battles that scorched the earth. The Davenport divorce, she surmised, would be the latter. Anya sat beside Julian, her hands clasped over her baby bump as if to shield her child from the toxicity in the room. She felt 100 pairs of eyes on her. The jury, the press sketch artists, the public spectators. Across the aisle, Ethan sat flanked by his legal team. He looked powerful and composed in a dark navy suit, occasionally whispering to Marcus Thorne with a confident smirk. He refused to look at Anya, his dismissal of her so complete it was a physical force. The morning was a blur of legal maneuvering. Thorne, as expected, was a master performer. He strode before the jury, his voice resonating with theatrical gravitas. He presented a timeline of the marriage carefully constructed to portray Anya as an opportunist. He highlighted Ethan's generosity, the cars, the jewelry, the lavish lifestyle she had enjoyed. This was a woman who came from nothing. Thorne declared, gesturing towards Anya without looking at her. And my client, Mr. Ethan Davenport, gave her everything. A home, a life of comfort and security. And how does she repay this kindness by attempting to leverage her pregnancy in a shameless cash grab? Julian's cross-examinations were brief and pointed, but they felt like chipping away at a mountain with a teaspoon. The jury's faces were hard to read, but Anya could feel the narrative taking hold. She was the villain of the story. The climax came in the afternoon, during Thorne's closing arguments for this preliminary phase, where he would present their final generous offer before the full trial proceeded. He portrayed Ethan as a man of reason, and Anya as the irrational, emotional party. Despite the clear evidence of opportunism, Thorne boomed his voice, dripping with condescension. Mr. Davenport, in his infinite goodwill, wishes to see the mother of his future child provided for. He is therefore making a final non-negotiable offer. He paused for dramatic effect. A lump sum payment of $500,000 and a monthly child support stipend of $20,000. A fortune for any normal person. All we ask in return is that Mrs. Davenport relinquish her spurious claims and agree to a custody arrangement that prioritizes the child's well-being in a stable environment. He was offering more money, but the sting was in the subtext, take the cash, give us the child, and disappear. It was the final calculated cruelty. All the months of fear, humiliation, and loneliness coalesced into a single point of unbearable pressure behind Anya's eyes. She couldn't stop it. A single tear broke free and traced a hot, silent path down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away, but it was too late. The jury saw it. Thorne saw it and gave a subtle, satisfied nod. The image was perfect, the weeping, defeated woman. Then Julian Croft stood up. He was the picture of calm. He walked not to the jury, but to the center of the courtroom, directly before Judge Albright's bench. The room grew quiet, expecting a final, perhaps desperate, rebuttal. "Mr. Croft," the judge prompted. Julian nodded respectfully. "Your Honor, we thank Mr. Thorne for his performance, and we categorically reject his client's offer." A murmur went through the room. Ethan leaned forward, his confident smirk faltering into a frown of annoyance. "My client, Anya Davenport, will not be accepting a single dollar of Mr. Davenport's money." Julian continued, his voice clear and steady, cutting through the silence. "Not now, not ever. For a very simple reason. She doesn't need it." Thorne let out a small, derisive scoff. "Your Honor, is this going somewhere?" "Oh, it is." "Mr. Thorne," Julian said, turning his head slightly to look at the opposing counsel. "It's going somewhere you could never have anticipated in your most creative legal filings." He turned back to the judge. "Your Honor, I have just been authorized by my associates in Geneva to unseal and present new information that is critically material to this case. Information that fundamentally alters my client's standing, not just in this courtroom, but in the world." Judge Albright leaned forward, intrigued. "Proceed, Counselor. But this had better be relevant." "It is the only thing that is relevant," Julian said. He took a deep breath, and the entire courtroom seemed to lean in with him. "For the past several months, Mr. Thorne has worked tirelessly to paint my client as a gold digger, a woman of no means desperate for a piece of the Davenport fortune. The premise of their entire case is that she is financially dependent and therefore motivated by greed." Julian paused, letting the statement hang in the air. He then looked directly at a confused and anxious Anya, giving her a small, reassuring nod, before turning back to the bench. "Your Honor," he declared, his voice ringing with a power no one in the room knew he possessed, as of 700 a.m., Central European Time. "This morning, a man named Arthur Kensington passed away peacefully in his home on Lake Geneva. The name meant nothing to most people in the room. But Ethan Davenport, a man who tracked global wealth, stiffened. His eyes widened slightly. He knew that name. Julian continued, his voice building. Arthur Kensington was a notoriously private man, but he was also the founder and sole owner of Kensington Global, one of the largest privately held industrial conglomerates on the planet. And he had one child, a daughter named Eleanor, who he was estranged from. That daughter moved to America, changed her name to Eleanor Hayes, and passed away 7 years ago. Anya's breath caught in her throat. Eleanor Hayes. Her mother. Julian's eyes found Ethan's across the courtroom, holding his shocked gaze. Eleanor Hayes had one child, a daughter. Mr. Kensington's only living direct descendant. According to his ironclad and irrevocable last will and testament, which was authenticated by Swiss authorities, not 3 hours ago his entire estate passes to her. Julian turned from the judge and made a slow, deliberate gesture towards the plaintiff's table where Anya sat. Frozen her face a mask of utter disbelief. "So you see, Your Honor, This case is built on a lie. My client is not a penniless gold digger. As of this morning, she is the sole legal heiress to the Kensington global industrial fortune, an estate valued conservatively at $3.7 billion. Silence. Not just silence. It was a vacuum, a complete and total cessation of sound, of movement, of breath. The court reporter's fingers hovered over her keys. The jury members stared, their mouths agape. Marcus Thorne's face had gone slack, the colour draining from it. Judge Albright's jaw had literally dropped. And Ethan Davenport looked as though he had been struck by lightning. The smugness, the confidence, the power, all of it evaporated in an instant, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated, horrified shock. The court was frozen, and in the center of the silent, spinning world, Anya Davenport looked from Julian to the judge, to the husband who had tried to cast her aside like trash, the single tear on her cheek. Now evidence not of weakness, but of a life so profoundly and irrevocably changed that no one in that room could yet comprehend it. The spell was broken by a loud gasp from a woman in the jury box. That single sound opened the floodgates. The courtroom erupted into a cacophony of frantic whispers, shuffling feet, and the frantic scratching of reporters' pens. Judge Albright slammed her gavel down, the sharp cracks barely piercing the rising chaos. "Order, order in this court," she commanded, her voice regaining its steel. "Councillors into my chambers. Now this court is in recess for 1 hour." Julian calmly gathered his papers, walked over to Anya, and gently touched her shoulder. She was trembling, her eyes wide and uncomprehending. "Billion," she whispered the word dying on her lips. "Breathe, Anya," Julian said softly. "Just breathe. I'll explain everything." He guided her out a side door, shielding her from the swarm of reporters who were already trying to surge forward. In the stark quiet of the judge's chambers, the reality began to sink in. Judge Albright sat behind her large desk, her expression a mixture of stern professionalism and undisguised astonishment. A few minutes later, a pale and shaken Marcus Thorne entered, followed by a stone-faced Ethan Davenport. The swagger was gone. He looked smaller, diminished. Mr. Croft, the judge, began, her voice low and serious. "You had better not be playing games in my courtroom. Is what you claimed out there the truth?" "It is, Your Honor," Julian said, placing a freshly printed and notarized document on her desk. "This is a certified communication from the executors of the Kensington estate in Zurich. They have been trying to locate my client for years. My father's old case files gave me a place to start. The timing of Mr. Kensington's death was providential." As Julian laid out the stunning truth, Anya listened, as if in a dream. Her mother Eleanor was the runaway daughter of a reclusive billionaire. Her entire life, her mother had worked as a librarian, raising Anya in a tiny, love-filled apartment, instilling in her values of kindness and humility. She had never once hinted at the world she had left behind. Why, Anya asked Julian, her voice choked with emotion. Why did she never tell me? "I believe she wanted to protect you," Julian said gently. "She ran away from that world of suffocating wealth and control to have a real life. She wanted you to grow up without the weight of the Kensington name. To be normal. In her own way, she gave you a gift." Ethan, who had been silent until now, finally spoke, his voice strained. "Anya, I had no idea." He took a step towards her, his face a mask of feigned sincerity. We need to talk. This changes everything. Our family. Anya flinched, as if he had tried to strike her. The fog of shock was beginning to clear, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. This man hadn't cared about their family when he served her divorce papers. He hadn't cared when he tried to take her child. He only cared now, when she had suddenly become more powerful than him. "Don't," she said, her voice surprisingly strong. "Don't you dare talk to me about family." Marcus Thorne, seeing his client's pathetic attempt, stepped in. "Your Honor, in light of this unprecedented development, we request a stay to re-evaluate our position." "You do that, Mr. Thorne," Judge Albright said, her gaze sharp. "Because from where I'm sitting, your entire case just evaporated. The allegation that Mrs. Davenport is motivated by financial gain is now frankly ludicrous." She looked from Ethan's desperate face to Anya's newly composed one. The power in the room had not just shifted, it had undergone a tectonic reversal. When they left the chambers, the courthouse hallway was a media circus. Flashbulbs went off like strobing lightning. "Mrs. Davenport, is it true, Anya? How does it feel?" Ethan tried to reach for her arm, to present a united front for the cameras. "Anya, please." Anya pulled away from him, her expression one of deep, settled disgust. Guided by Julian, she pushed through the throng without a word, her silence more powerful than any statement she could have made. Back in Julian's modest office, the reality of her new life began to set in. Her phone was buzzing incessantly with calls from numbers she didn't recognize. Financial advisors long lost, family friends, wealth managers, the vultures were already circling. Julian calmly unplugged the phone. "You'll need a team to handle this," he said. "A good one. We'll build it together. People we can trust." "I don't know who to trust," Anya confessed, sinking into a chair. "Julian, my entire life has been a lie. My mother—" "Your mother loved you," he finished for her. "She gave you a life of genuine love, not of privilege. Arthur Kensington left you his money, but your mother left you your character. Don't ever forget which one is more valuable." That night, for the first time, Anya didn't sleep in the guest room of a friend's house. A discreet security team, arranged by the Kensington estate executors, moved her into a suite at the Peninsula Hotel under an assumed name. As she looked out over the glittering cityscape of Los Angeles, she felt a profound sense of dislocation. She was no longer just Anya. She was the Kensington heiress. The world would never look at her the same way again. And as for Ethan Davenport, she realized with a chilling certainty he had not just divorced his wife. He had discarded a queen, and he had no idea what kind of reign was about to begin. The news of the billionaire heiress in courtroom 4B spread like wildfire. It was on every news channel, every blog, every financial gossip column. The Davenport divorce, from gold digger to tycoon. The narrative had been flipped on its head. Suddenly, Ethan wasn't the powerful victim. He was the world's biggest fool. The man who had it all had thrown away the one thing that would have cemented his place in the global elite forever. His world began to unravel with astonishing speed. The board of Davenport Capital, already wary of his arrogant leadership style, grew nervous. His affair with Isabella Croft, now public, was seen not as a private matter, but as a catastrophic lapse in judgment. Lenders grew cautious. Business partners started hedging their bets. The predator had suddenly become prey, and the sharks of Wall Street could smell blood in the water. Ethan, in his panic, did the only thing he knew how to do. He tried to acquire. he launched a full-scale campaign to win Anya back. The first day, a forest of white orchids, Anya's favorite, arrived at her hotel. They were sent back. The next day, a courier delivered a velvet box containing the North Star diamond, a flawless blue diamond necklace worth millions. It was returned with a curt note from Julian's office. Then came the desperate phone calls and emails, not just to Anya, but to Julian. "This is all a misunderstanding," he pleaded in a voicemail. "I love Anya. The stress of the business. I wasn't thinking clearly. We can fix this. We can build an Emma together for our child." Anya listened to the message with Julian, her expression unreadable. When it was finished, she simply said, "Delete it." Under Julian's guidance, she was moving with a speed and decisiveness that surprised everyone, most of all herself. The timid, tearful woman from the courtroom was gone, replaced by someone forged in the crucible of betrayal and shock. She was no longer reacting. She was acting. First, she withdrew her original divorce petition. Then she filed a new one. This time, she was the plaintiff, and the grounds were not irreconcilable differences, but emotional cruelty and infidelity. She wasn't asking for a single cent of his money. The petition made that explicitly clear. What she demanded was far more damaging to a man like Ethan. She demanded a full and public apology for the slanderous accusations made against her. She demanded sole legal and physical custody of their unborn child, citing his morally bankrupt character and his attempt to use the child as a bargaining chip. His visitation rights, the petition stated, would be minimal and supervised pending the results of a court-ordered psychological evaluation, the very tactic he had tried to use on her. Finally, she demanded that he cover all her legal fees, not because she needed the money, but as a matter of principle. It was a declaration of war, fought not with financial claims, but with moral authority. Marcus Thorne, reading the new filing, reportedly threw it across his office. His case was in shambles. There was no defense. How could he argue that Anya was unfit when Ethan's own behavior was now a matter of public record and ridicule? Ethan was apoplectic. He tried to confront Anya at her hotel, but was blocked by her new, highly efficient security detail. He was photographed arguing with the guards, his face red and contorted with rage, an image that splashed across the tabloids the next day, further cementing his reputation as an unstable bully. Anya, meanwhile, was shielded from the chaos. Julian had assembled a small, fiercely loyal team. A seasoned estate lawyer, a pragmatic financial advisor, and a discreet public relations expert. They met not in boardrooms, but in the quiet of Anya's suite. They were helping her understand the sheer scale of the Kensington Empire mines in Australia, tech patents in Asia, real estate in London. It was overwhelming, but with each briefing, Anya felt a new sense of purpose growing within her. This wasn't just money. It was a legacy. It was power. And she was determined to wield it in a way that would have made her mother proud. The final meeting with Ethan took place not in a courtroom, but in a neutral conference room at Julian's law firm. Ethan came alone this time, his lawyers waiting outside. He looked tired and defeated. The sharp edges of his arrogance had been worn down. "Anya," he began, his voice soft. "I'm sorry. For everything." Anya looked at him, her gaze clear and steady. She saw him now for what he was. A hollow man, defined only by his wealth and his power over others. With her, he had no power. Her new fortune was an impenetrable shield. "Are you sorry for what you did, Ethan?" she asked quietly. "Or are you sorry that you got caught? Are you sorry you tried to destroy me? Or are you just sorry you found out I was the one person you couldn't afford to make an enemy of?" He had no answer. "I will accept your signature on the divorce settlement as my apology," she said, sliding the papers across the table. "You will stay away from me. You will stay away from my child. Perhaps one day, if you can prove you are a changed man, you can be a part of her life. But you will have to earn it. The days of you taking whatever you want are over." He stared at the papers at the woman before him. She was no longer the soft, malleable girl he had married. She was a queen, calm and absolute in her power. Defeated, he picked up the pen and signed his name. Surrendering everything he had fought for, realizing too late that in his greed to secure his kingdom, he had lost the entire world. 6 months later, the world of Anya Hayes was unrecognizable. The divorce was a quiet, finalized affair. Ethan Davenport, stripped of his dignity and a significant portion of his company's value, due to the scandal, had retreated from public life. He was a cautionary tale, whispered about at cocktail parties, a fallen titan. Anya, however, was just beginning her ascent. She gave birth to a beautiful, healthy baby girl with a full head of dark hair. She named her Eleanor. Holding her daughter in her arms in the private, sun-drenched room of the maternity ward, Anya felt a sense of peace she had never known. All the chaos, the betrayal, and the shocking revelations had led to this perfect, quiet moment. This was what mattered. She did not move into a Malibu mansion or a Park Avenue penthouse. Instead, she purchased a sprawling but understated historical home in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood in Pasadena, a place that felt warm and full of life. It was a home for a family, not a showcase for wealth. The weight of the Kensington name and fortune was immense, but Anya refused to be defined by it. She spent months with her team of advisors learning every facet of the empire her grandfather had built. She was a quick study with an intuitive grasp of the human element behind the balance sheets. She saw that Kensington Global was a powerful engine, but it lacked a soul. She decided to give it one. Her first major act as the head of the company was not an acquisition or a corporate restructuring, but the creation of the Elena Hayes Foundation, a philanthropic organization endowed with an initial $5 billion of the Kensington fortune. Its mission was simple and drawn directly from the values her mother had taught her, to provide support for those who had no voice. The foundation's first initiatives were deeply personal. It established a network of shelters for women and children, fleeing abusive situations, providing not just safety, but legal aid, job training, and psychological support. It created a massive scholarship fund for underprivileged students, focusing on those like her mother who chose the arts and humanities. And its flagship project was the Julian Croft Center for Justice, a national organization dedicated to funding and supporting public interest lawyers who fought for the common good, ensuring that no one would ever have to face a legal battle alone, simply because they couldn't afford it. Anya herself did not retreat into a private life of quiet philanthropy. She became the face of her foundation, a reluctant but powerful public figure. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, but carried the immense weight of her story and her resources. She wasn't the glamorous socialite Ethan had tried to mold her into. She was something far more formidable, a woman of substance, purpose, and immense power, used not for self-aggrandizement, but for genuine change. One sunny afternoon, she was sitting on a blanket in her garden, her daughter Elena babbling happily beside her. Julian Croft, now a trusted friend, and the chairman of her foundation's advisory board, sat with her going over some documents. "The first round of grants from the Center for Justice went out last week," he said, smiling. "We've already funded 37 lawyers across the country." Anya looked at him, her heart full. "My mother would have liked that," she said, softly. She looked down at her daughter, who was reaching for a bright yellow flower. She saw her own mother's eyes, her own resilience, and the untainted promise of a new beginning. She had been tested in the most brutal of ways, stripped of everything she thought she knew, only to discover a strength she never realized she had, and a legacy she never expected. She was not Anya Davenport, the discarded wife. She was not even Anya Kensington, the billionaire heiress. She was Anya Hayes Eleanor's daughter and Elena's mother. She had found her own name, her own voice, and her own purpose. And her story, the real story, was just beginning. 3 years passed. The world that had been violently upended found a new quiet equilibrium. Anya's life took on a rhythm that was both demanding and deeply fulfilling. Her daughter Eleanor was a vibrant, curious toddler, her laughter the true north of Anya's existence. Their Pasadena home was a sanctuary of warmth and normalcy, a world away from the astronomical sums discussed in boardrooms and foundation meetings. Anya had proven to be a surprisingly adept leader. She had a quiet intelligence and an empathy that, when combined with the vast resources at her command, made for a potent force. The Elena Hayes Foundation was a global success, celebrated for its tangible impact. Yet Anya knew that philanthropy alone was not enough. To truly honor the full scope of her legacy, she had to engage with the colossal complex machine her grandfather had built, Kensington Global. For decades, the company had operated under a simple, ruthless philosophy: profit above all. It was a titan of the old world, with a reputation for aggressive tactics and an almost sociopathic disregard for its environmental and human impact. Anya, guided by Julian and a new team of progressive advisors, began the slow, monumental task of turning the supertanker. She started pushing for sustainable practices in their mining operations, investing in green technology, and implementing fair labor policies in their overseas factories. This did not go unnoticed. The old guard, the men who had been Arthur Kensington's lieutenants for half a century, watched from the shadows with growing disapproval. They saw her not as a leader, but as a naive girl, playing with her inheritance, dismantling a perfectly efficient engine of wealth to appease her conscience. The first shot was fired in the pages of the Financial Times. A lengthy, meticulously researched article appeared profiling the new direction of Kensington Global. It was a masterful piece of character assassination, quoting numerous anonymous senior sources who lamented the company's decline under its new, unfocused and sentimental leadership. The article painted Anya as a dilettante, more interested in charity photo ops than in shareholder value, a trust fund activist who was eroding the very foundations of her grandfather's empire. The article was a declaration of war. Julian's team quickly traced the source of the coordinated leaks to one man, Alastair Finch. Finch was in his late 70s, a hawk-faced man with eyes like chips of granite. He had been Arthur Kensington's COO for 40 years, the man who had translated the founder's tyrannical vision into reality. He had been respectfully retired when Anya took over, but he had never relinquished his influence. To him, Kensington Global was not Anya's birthright. It was his life's work. "He's rallying the board," Julian told Anya in her sunlit home office, little Elena's finger paintings taped to the wall behind her. "The members loyal to him see you as a temporary custodian. They think you can be pushed aside." Anya looked out the window at her daughter, who was chasing a butterfly on the lawn. A cold resolve settled over her. She had fought for her child, for her freedom. Now she would have to fight for her legacy. "Then I'm going to London," she said, her voice calm and firm. "I'm calling a special meeting of the board. It's time they meet the woman who is actually in charge." The Kensington Global Boardroom in London was a chamber designed to intimidate. The walls were panelled in dark, ancient wood. The air was heavy with the scent of leather and tradition, and a massive portrait of a scowling Arthur Kensington loomed over the head of the 20-foot-long mahogany table. Anya walked in, not in a power suit, but in a simple, elegant dress, the lone woman in a room of 15 grey-haired men in dark suits. Alistair Finch sat opposite her, his posture ramrod straight, his expression one of undisguised contempt. He began the meeting not with pleasantries, but with a direct assault. "Ms. Hayes." He began dispensing with the formality of her married name. "We have watched as you have systematically undermined the core principles that made this company the giant it is. Arthur Kensington built this empire on strength, on shrewd calculation, and on an unsentimental focus on the bottom line. You are diverting billions into frivolous social projects and strangling our most profitable divisions with so-called ethical regulations. You are turning a lion into a lamb, and for that you will be devoured by the market." A murmur of agreement went around the table. Anya let the silence settle her gaze, sweeping over each man, before it landed on Finch. "Thank you for your candor, Alistair," she said, her voice perfectly even. The use of his first name was a subtle power play, and he flinched almost imperceptibly. "You invoke my grandfather's name as if you are the sole keeper of his vision. You are mistaken. You were his employee. I am his blood." She stood up and walked to the head of the table, turning on a large screen behind her. "You speak of strength and the bottom line. Let's talk about them." What followed was not an emotional plea, but a brilliant data-driven dissection of Finch's archaic worldview. She presented market analysis, showing the rapidly growing multi-trillion-dollar market for ESG environmental, social, and governance investing. She displayed charts showing that their new ethical policies had already reduced legal liabilities and insurance premiums by 9%. She showed them internal reports revealing that their investment in employee wellness had cut attrition by half, saving the company hundreds of millions in recruitment and training costs. "My grandfather," she continued, her voice gaining strength, "was a genius because he saw the world as it was and anticipated where it was going. He built an empire for the 20th century. Clinging to his exact methods now is not loyalty. It's corporate malpractice. You accuse me of sentimentality. I accuse you of nostalgia. You are driving by looking in the rear-view mirror." She looked directly at Alistair Finch. "You mistake kindness for weakness. You see the foundation as a drain, when in fact it is our greatest asset. It is the face of a new Kensington Global One that can attract the best young talent. One that governments want to work with, one that customers are proud to buy from. You built a fortress, Alistair. I am building a future." She turned back to the board. "The world is changing. You can either change with it under my leadership, or you can become a fossil, a relic of a bygone era, clutching a portrait of a man who would be the first to call you a fool for not adapting." The room was silent. The board members looked from the data on the screen to Anya's resolute face, and then to the suddenly small-looking Alistair Finch. They were businessmen. They understood numbers, risk, and the changing winds of capital. In that moment, they saw not a naive girl, but a visionary. They saw Arthur Kensington's true heir. Anya had won. She had walked into the lion's den and proven she was the one with the sharpest teeth. As she flew back to California that night, high above the clouds, she looked at a photo of Elena on her phone. She was fighting not just to protect an empire, but to build a world worthy of her daughter. She had fully integrated the two sides of her being, the compassionate heart of Eleanor Hayes and the formidable mind of Arthur Kensington, and the world was about to see what a woman like that could build. Anya's journey from a courtroom of tears to a boardroom of influence is a powerful testament to the fact that our true worth is never defined by others. She was branded a gold digger by a man who only understood value in terms of dollars, only for the world to discover that her hidden legacy was greater than his could ever be. But her ultimate victory wasn't the money she inherited. It was the purpose she chose. She transformed a story of personal betrayal into a public mission of hope and justice, honoring the humble mother who gave her everything that truly mattered. Her story is a reminder that the most profound reversals of fortune happen not in our bank accounts, but in our spirit. If this story of resilience and unexpected justice moved you, please give this video a like and share it with someone who needs a reminder of their own inner strength. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more true-life dramatic stories that will leave you breathless. Click that notification bell so you never miss an update.